Welcome to Round Hill Radio, the podcast from Round Hill Community Church. Through our conversations, we discover the holy and the ordinary by moments of grace and peace and redefine what we're talking about. We talk about faith. Good morning, Shannon.
Good morning.
Welcome to Round Hill Radio.
This is so cool. Can I just say, it is so great to be here.
We're so happy to have you here. This is very exciting. I'm one of those people that I like to have a peek behind the curtain. So I'm just going to say, we've had a whole 20-minute conversation here. I forgot to record.
I feel so much better about being a human being.
I feel extremely human right now. So we're just going to start it off with like a,
I'm new. I'm new back again.
You're new back again.
Yes.
We're so happy to have you back.
Thank
you.
you.
So you were here at Round Hill for like 6 or so years.
6 years.
Early aughts, as they're calling it, I believe.
Okay. Yes, from 2005 to 2011.
2011.
And now I'm called the Interim Pastoral Associate. I'm here on a very limited basis. So I'm 4 hours of pastoral care a week.
Right.
Preaching once a month. Helping with liturgy other times, and then doing a women's retreat.
That's so exciting. Yeah. That's such a cool thing.
November 6th, sign up.
Sign up. It's on the website,
registration's
guys.
on the website. Yep.
That's exciting.
Self-compassion.
Which we've been talking about across the board. Right. It's funny how we keep finding all these like little through threads about it. It's such a funny thing.
We need it. And we are, as human beings, we're poor at giving it to ourselves.
Right.
But we can't give it to other people if we don't give it to ourselves.
That's the thing.
Right.
It kind of starts there, doesn't it?
Yes.
So this experience of coming back, how has that been?
It has been so lovely to meet new people such as yourself.
You too.
To meet new members, people coming in to check out the church, even in the middle of COVID. And then to renew past relationships, friends and pastoral relationships. And then also to grieve on another level those who are no longer here, whether they've moved away or who have died.
Yeah.
But I really do love this place. So it worked out perfectly for me just to come in and do some work.
I mean, it's been amazing. I'll speak for myself that it's been such a gift because you have a history in media.
I did.
It's like God was like, here, you could use some Shannon. Have some help.
That's too kind.
You need some help. And I'm like, yes, I do.
No.
And so so you were in news?
So when I was here last time, I had started after my second congregation, which was North Greenwich Congregational Church. I was pastor there for 6 years as well. I left and I thought, you know what? The conversation we're having here about being authentically human and real in the world as people of faith, because I was very much into interfaith relationships at that point too. I wanted to take it on a bigger scale. So I got some training and started behind the camera at CBS News in the religion unit. And we did 4 interfaith documentaries a year, which was so interesting. Yeah. And then I still wanted to do something on camera. So, that was no less than God, because at age 40 to get into TV is like unbelievable.
Wild.
So I put together a tape, took it to News 12 Westchester, and lo and behold, the executive producer happened to be a staunch Episcopalian.
Yeah.
And he said, you know what? Our religious population is tremendously underserved. So come on in. We'll train you on the job. You can do a full, as a freelancer, full beat. Yeah. And they sent me on, they gave me the opportunity to pitch some religious stories. So I got to do some really cool stories, as well as the Tappan Zee Bridge is very busy this morning, as you can see.
Hey guys, there's traffic.
It snowed again. But, doing a 4 a.m. to, noon shift, or a 1:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m.
Wow.
And doing that sometimes before worship on Sunday morning on a Saturday night, brought a different level of reality to my ministry here.
Right. And this sort of experience of the whole world.
The whole world.
Or at least the whole local world.
Yeah. As I told you the story about going to a vigil for a gang member in Yonkers on a Saturday night, and then coming here on Sunday morning and realizing those worlds are real for a lot of different people.
Right.
But how do you bring those together?
Yeah.
So that news work made my ministry more real, and it made my news more compassionate.
Do you think it shaped what you wanted to do with your ministry or how you expressed yourself?
Well, it's interesting. I'm ordained in the Presbyterian Church, and the Presbytery actually gave me the designation of ministry in the media.
Ooh.
Yeah. So they, some people go into church work or, in congregational life. And for that period of time, that's what they did. So they saw the value of that. And, now we know, as you're doing this here, it's so important to reach people beyond those who are sitting in the pews.
Absolutely.
Because so many people either have moved away or they can't get to church, or you're reaching a community that you'll never see in person.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. And it's exciting too, because you think about, the kind of theology we have here, which I like to think of as being very curious. Like, we don't pretend to have all the answers, very compassionate, very loving, very welcoming, non-judgmental, that maybe isn't the truth everywhere. And that for someone looking for a like-minded faith experience to what they're feeling in their hearts, and they're maybe not finding it in a local place, that we can welcome them into our community, even if they don't live here.
Right. Because, so often, in fact, one of my gigs was working with Auburn Media to train responsible religious voices for TV.
Ooh, wow.
And oftentimes people producers will just go to the Rolodex and see who's, and oftentimes they're very conservative voices.
Right.
So to be able to train people who present a different viewpoint is really important. And the word that you're getting out here from this church, and the spirituality that is more inclusive and more open to the ambiguities of life is really important, and not always heralded out in media.
Right. The thing that really solidified the purpose of what we're doing here is kind of a random connection, but people who are on YouTube a lot will recognize the names Rhett and Link from Good Mythical Morning. They have a podcast called Ear Biscuits, which is a great name. But they went through their whole, what they call their spiritual deconstruction, where they had been raised in a very extreme conservative upbringing. And it had basically, as they went out and had careers, that to them, a faith life was no longer possible, because to them it was an either or situation. And they were so beautifully vulnerable in sharing this story, and so honest. But the whole time they were talking, I was like, there is another choice. Yeah. There are communities that don't say you have to believe this, and this in order to be a person of faith and live compassionately.
Well, and not only that, but that story that you just told shows you that people can change.
Right.
Right? And so, in fact, that's kind of my story too. You don't know this, but I grew up as a fundamentalist.
Really?
Yes, in White Plains, New York. Yes. In fact, it was a Plymouth Brethren church where women were not allowed to speak.
No.
Yes.
No.
And yes, it was a literalist congregation. And so I grew up in that. And it wasn't until after undergraduate and a 3-year banking career, and I went to live in Japan for a year, that all deconstructed. So it's like all of a sudden I didn't know what to believe because people weren't telling me what I had to believe. Right. And so it all kind of fell apart. And that kind of theology is oftentimes like a house of cards. And if you pull one piece out, there's nothing to hold it. So I literally kind of abandoned that faith while I was over there as a missionary.
As a missionary?
Yeah, I was teaching English.
Wow, in Japan.
Mm-hmm. And then it made me want to come back and go to seminary and think, oh my goodness. So I had been anti-LGBTQ before. All the right-wing kinds of things.
Right. You sort of take all the boxes that you feel like you have to.
And then, boom, I kind of came back and started questioning then, well, women, I started reading, in seminary, different stories about women in ministry. And I'm like, I never heard that before.
Wow.
And so it shifted me.
So as you pulled the card of your faith and and the house started tumbling, because to me that feels like you had this experience and then you're like, I'm gonna go to seminary. So if that feels like a leap to me. What happened that prompted that decision? Because that's a big decision to go to seminary, especially if your faith is feeling unsteady.
Well, it was the move was to go. I started at Fuller Theological Seminary in Pasadena, California. I was living in North Carolina at that time. And I went to become a counselor to missionaries because they were leaving the field because they couldn't get along with each other.
Oh.
So I went, and then it was there that this kind of shift about women in ministry kind of happened. And, God can do amazing things in and through us. And there was just a lot of shifting. And I think that year over there I was so taken with the beauty of the people and the culture and the fact that, according to my theology, all those people were going to hell, but the Japanese people were nicer to me, and the Buddhists, than the people that were calling themselves Christians. So it just didn't make sense. So then it was a thing of, okay, so if I don't believe that, what do I believe? And I need to learn how to feed myself spiritually.
That takes a lot of grit to stick with that, instead of just be like, well, guess not anymore. Because I feel like that's a common thing of people like that, to stick with that and dig and dig and dig takes a lot of work.
It does, but I think that was one of the gifts of that former Christian life.
Yeah.
Was the commitment to knowing that God was there. So if that wasn't it, and I remember learning in seminary that as we grow, if our images of God don't change along with our emotional selves, then we lose the ability to tap into it. So we kind of grow away from it. So I had to change along with it. It was so I remember in one course, the professor saying, on a scale of 1 to 10, where's your anxiety level? And I remember thinking, I'm off the charts. Because it was about women in ministry and how the scriptures did not say women shouldn't speak. Paul was talking in Timothy about women shouldn't speak now because of what was going on culturally. So I thought,
rude.
So it kind of started a whole feminist journey for me. That's it's about justice too, and kind of seeing peoples that were not recognized and kind of looking at things, a social justice journey.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about that experience for you in seminary of looking around and being like, okay, so what I've been told of who God is doesn't seem to align with what my heart is telling me and what say they're Christian. And I just, the fact, I'm stuck on this, the fact that you stuck with it and that you went through it instead of tapping out. And what a gift that is now to the world that you have continued to do that. And now that's a ministry for you.
Well, you know what? A colleague of mine once said, you can either go through seminary or have it go through you. And so if you are not being torn up and, and that's why you really have to kind of go away and do it. It makes it's really hard to do it in the midst of things.
Right.
That, we're shaped and changed by the things that we learn. And it would be, one option would be just to go through and say, okay, I'm learning this stuff and have it be in your head versus having it trickle down to your heart and having it break open your heart.
Yeah.
Because my experience is that more progressive churches have hearts that are broken open.
There's a big vulnerability there, right?
Total.
That's what struck me, because in my graduate school experience, the Institute of Sacred Music is part of the seminary program. So we had lots of common classes. Like I took a preaching class, and that really was.
Does Ed know this?
Don't look at me. I learned enough to know that's not my ministry. There's this great, I have to tell you, this is so funny. There's a interior designer. Her name is Shavonda Gardner, who I follow on Instagram. And she has this saying when there's something that she's not good at and she knows that, so she'll hire it out. She says, that's not in my ministry. I've just started using that now. I'm like, can I say that? Can I use that for the dishes? Like, that's not my ministry. I'm sorry. Sorry. I digress. But going back to this idea of there's a vulnerability and honesty that is so disparate from some other faith experiences where a minister will be almost this like omniscient, like know everything nonsense, is my opinion. But that's the thing I love about what we're doing here, because none of us are ever pretending we know everything.
Oh my goodness.
My
last congregation, and I was sober when I was here, but my last congregation, the first sermon that I preached, and I was in Wilton for 8.5 years. And the first time I just said, okay, so I've been sober 20 years and here's a little bit of my story. And people were like, huh?
What?
And I'm like, we're going to do this authentically. You're going to see that I'm a human being.
Right.
I'm not going to put myself on a pedestal, and don't you dare put me up on one.
Right.
And people started coming up to me and saying, I drink too much. And I'm like, I'll take you to an AA meeting.
Wow.
Let's do that. So everybody has their stuff.
Right.
If we aren't able to own that with each other, then we're not doing ministry.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's a whole other way of looking at ministry. And I think it's so fascinating I think, there's something about this thing where people aren't people anymore if they have a certain job, and this real humanity that you bring to it and that everyone here brings to it. I think, this is not,
I mean, Ed's great about that too, right?
Absolutely,
I mean,
yeah.
He's approachable. As someone said, Ed's very user-friendly.
I love that. It's true.
It's true.
It's true.
I really like what I see in him and what I hear in him. He's sane, which is
it's
saying
that's
a lot,
common, friends. We
not
are grateful
all senior
for
pastors are sane. But no, he's very approachable, and that sets the tone for what's acceptable in a congregation.
Well, and just the vision of, we wouldn't have any of this digital ministry without him being at least agreeing to it, if not spearheading it.
Right. And the leadership saying, yes, that's where we want to go to.
Yeah.
And seeing that is, the church will never be, the church, Big C church, the church worldwide will never be what it was. It's shifting as we speak. And we can't cling to the past. We have to continue opening up. And that's scary for a lot of people. So just to acknowledge that piece and then to adapt in new ways like this.
Yeah.
This is incredible.
How do you think COVID has affected Big C Church?
In a lot of ways. For some people, it's made them more entrenched in their, in the fear. So you've got the rise of some congregations where it's more on the right. For others, it's, the loneliness and the disconnection of not being able to gather in person for so long has been really painful. And for others, they've kind of said, this is a new way I like to experience church online, right? So, and then others have just have reached out. The committee here at the church reached out in so many different ways to people who were alone. And so, I think there was a real longing because church is about community, right? And so if people had to put the in-person community aside for a while, there was either ways that people adapted to new ways. I've heard people say, oh yeah, I went to church in 4 different places today because they were able to visit 4 different congregations. Bless them. Just getting through one service is enough for me.
Oh, I guess.
For churches that were able to pivot online, as you all did, and as we did in Wilton, and those folks held some folks. But I think it was a time for potential deepening. There was a lot of loss, whether it's loss of people who died or people who lost a sense of feeling belonging. And so one of the tasks, I think, as we come out of this is to help people process that grieving.
Yeah. I remember when it looked like things were opening back up again. Yeah. That was, for me, very scary. Yeah. I felt very unnerved because I felt like adjusting to the quarantine world was very difficult as an extrovert.
Right.
Struggle. And so I've sort of felt like, okay, I've now gotten in the groove, and I feared the transition back. Yes. And then, as a person who's a planner, then to go, oh, we're opening, oh, we're not opening, oh, we're, and the back and forth for me it's not my comfort zone. I'm learning how to ride it.
So I'm going to put in a pitch for praying for your pastors right now.
Oh, goodness.
And for your musicians, because this past year, I was head of a congregation that was, 280 people. It was exhausting.
Yeah.
And so people coming out now and having to kind of shift back into adjusting. Right. Pray for Ed, pray for Leslie, pray for pastors around to have a renewal of energy, because it's, a lot of people have left ministry altogether.
Yeah.
after COVID, or I
Big
have
life
left
changes,
positions. I mean, I
right?
left my position there.
Right.
I mean, we had in our congregation in Wilton, 500 families out of a town of 18,000 that moved because so many people were coming up from New York City and offering amazing prices for their houses. So that meant people left the congregation, right? So that's exhausting for pastors. I'm sure you had some of that here in Greenwich too.
Oh yeah,
So.
a lot of changeover. I don't know. I don't know where to go from there. But I think it's, there's so much. So I just want to thank you for being so generous with your time today.
Thank you for having me.
I have a sneaky suspicion if you'll be on here more, because I'm going to demand it, because you're amazing. And I just love talking to you. And thank you for being so vulnerable and open and honest in our conversation today. I know that's how you roll, which I really just respect that so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shannon. And thank you all for watching or listening to Round Hill Radio, brought to you by the friends and members of Round Hill Community Church. We'll see you back here next week.